between those three things, zero in on that the customer, the long-term Bitcoin holder. How can you provide valuable financial services for them? How can you do it in a way that other incumbents aren't going to see as valuable? You're doing it maybe a more technologically native way, ideologically or product set native way. And so that was kind of what was formed the early intention, the early product strategy for Unchained.
How do you provide services such as trading, loans, inheritance, and retirement, all while maintaining a collaborative custody model? We speak with one of the industry leaders, Unchained, about what they are working on. It's a fascinating conversation, and if you enjoy, please remember to like, share, or subscribe, as this all helps us greatly. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. Lynn and Israel are partners at Base Layer Advisors, where they employ their strong network of venture capital partners and startups to connect investors with unique opportunities within the Bitcoin innovation space. Alongside this, they support founders with their strategic growth and fundraising goals. Visit our website's advisory section to learn more. Welcome to Build with Bitcoin. I'm co-host Israel Munoz, joined with co-host Lynn Bairstow. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Joe Kelly, co-founder at Unchained. Joe, welcome. Great to have you on.
We're excited to be here.
Pleasure is definitely ours, Joe. Unchained is one of the first companies that really kind of came to the spotlight in the Bitcoin space. And of course, long story to be told since its early founding days. But before we get into Unchained, the company and what your business does, the financial services that you provide, we'd like to start with a little background on you, Joe, as a co-founder, as much as you'd like to share as far as what you did before Unchained and what got you into Bitcoin in the first place.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur all my career. I had the good fortune, actually after some misfortune, my family, I lost my mother to cancer when I was 13. And that was tough, obviously. But my dad, he always had a dream. He always wanted to go sailing. I wanted to sail around the world on a sailboat someday. And he pulled my sister and I aside after his wife had passed and was like, kids, let's go do this. I want to give this a shot. So we sold everything. We were in Anchorage, Alaska at the time, and we drove down to Florida, bought a sailboat, moved on to that. I lived in that for 3 years as a teenager. And it's a remarkable experience. I learned a lot about self-reliance, taking responsibility. Also, the way we do things in the United States is not exactly how it's done everywhere else at all levels of society, how kids go to school, how people use money, how people trade, or what lifestyles they choose. So it really opened my mind by the time I turned 18 into just kind of wanting to exert some control or have agency over what I did with my time on this earth and how it was spent, and saw entrepreneurship as like the path to realize that. I thought, maybe a way to learn to be an entrepreneur was to go to business school. So I started at UT Austin here as a freshman and really struggled. It was a tough integration period. And for people who have lived internationally and then come back to the US, I know there's a reverse culture shock. I definitely had that. So I was depressed that year, and there were just challenges or lots of things to not enjoy. UT's done a lot better since then. They've embraced entrepreneurship, but at that time it wasn't so friendly. So I dropped out, intending to start businesses. I actually had a residential contracting company for about a year that I ran with a friend. So kind of working the trades, and I learned that also through that time and through that experience working in trades, and I prefer maybe technology. I'd like to maybe work in more of a growing field that I could have an impact. I met shortly after leaving UT some grad students that had started a project called InfoChimps, and they were doing data analysis, aggregation of different data sets. This is now 2008, 2009. So just as big data was becoming a term, we had all these technologies for managing data sets that were coming out of the Googles and Yahoos and Facebooks of the world. And that methodology combined with cloud computing, like distributing data across multiple computers, was part of how enterprises and new organizations were tackling the problem of large data sets. So that business on InfoChimps was really at the nexus of all those things. And for 4 years, we ran that, went through a painful pivot, learned what it's like to start a company that is more bred out of like a technology or solution oriented vision versus a customer and problem oriented vision. And then we had to reverse our playbook to become more the latter over that company's time. And through a lot of the grit, endurance, and just like figuring things out, we succeeded. Yeah, I consider it really a base hit as an entrepreneur. We sold that to Computer Sciences Corporation in 2013. And one of the co-founders there, his name's Drew. He's my co-founder here at Unchained. He had heard about Bitcoin over the years there, and none of us had time to pay attention to it. But after we sold that business and we felt like we had some money we could afford to lose for the first time in our lives, we bought some Bitcoin with it, started to get more interested and involved. And I think too, Drew was really my Sherpa. I think a lot of us can credit like some friend or some person that helped us up the mountain of understanding of Bitcoin and how it works. And he was well primed for it because he had that same experience with data and distributed systems and how the kind of computer science challenge of getting computers to talk to each other and have a consistency or an understanding about the state of the world or some data set got him to see the practical nature of Bitcoin's blockchain, what problems it solved. And he was just somebody I could really trust and kind of asking questions about, well, what if this works? Or what if the government decides to do this? Or how does, these things kind of get informed or enforced? So that was looking at my entree to Bitcoin. Unchained came a few years later. But yeah, that was kind of my priming. And at least that way, I think why I mentioned that sailing experience too, is it's, I think, just about that worldview that was open and ready for seeing something different that's so much, like the water of our experience that is money. So thinking that could be done differently.
It's really interesting. I think living at Mexico at the time that I was introduced to Bitcoin, 2012, 2013, I think it does. If you have a worldview that's a little bit outside of the U.S. or a structured financial system, it helps you see some of the problems it solves a little easier.
We were in Venezuela for 6 months. This is like 2005, I want to say. And yeah, just the fact of like, oh, there's a black market for the money that the government says is worth this, but then like I go to this other place and I get they say it's 1,500 bolivars per dollar, and this place it's like 3,000. Just this, you get that experience, and then not to mention just your remittances or the other kind of use cases, or what does it mean to exchange value human to human without just understanding that like governments are just people making stuff up.
Yeah. I mean, there is like a natural peer-to-peer market for money, and for, in countries and geographies where it's, I think it helps see the potential of Bitcoin. Joe, so from 2013, when you and Drew were first involved with it, to 2016 when you started Unchained, I mean, how did you go about thinking about starting a Bitcoin company? Or did you do something in the interim? Or was there something about your experience with working in Bitcoin that helped you identify what the need was for a business?
Yeah, we'd in one part was after we sold that business, we'd gotten outreach from people that were advisors at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, their private wealth business. And so we kind of saw this world, and we've done okay, but we're certainly, we need to go back to work at some point. But it's like, oh, these are, this is a sales process. We're now of a type of target customer for people at these banks and wealth management companies. So it was just, one data point for us. And then when it came, we spent a year and a half, at the acquiring company, the business that bought, InfoChimps. That after we left and we were triaging what to do next. Drew and I had a great relationship. We were best friends by that time, looking at kind of what other projects to start next. We saw that for all the mistakes we made at the former business, the best decision we made was just starting the company in the right sector. Starting a big data company in 2008 or 2009 was the one decision that made that business kind of work out. So, I mean, that was certainly part of the analysis for us as well in 2015 and 16 of like, it's not even so much about trends. It's just about what's going to maximize your chance of success. So what's something that looks like it's going to be bigger tomorrow. It's going to be much bigger in 10 years than it is today or at that time. So that's one lens. And luckily that's held true for Bitcoin. I think it still holds true. There's still a space to start something with even less constraints on it today than there were back then. Because we could talk about later what it was like getting a checking account for a Bitcoin business in 2016 and 17, but that was just the kind of problems you had then. But the other level analysis was I'd mentioned that having kind of an inverted business plan early. That was like, oh, we're doing this cool tech. This is cool for these reasons, and let's go find people that want it, or that we solve this problem. And we had this very kind of boil the ocean, uh, by analogy, kind of business plan early on for that company, and it really gave me a healthy lens to look at what at that time was the narrative is this I don't know about Bitcoin, but blockchain, that's that's cool technology. That was how you sounded smart when you were 15 in 2015, 16, and still even years since. And that smelled to me. That was like so clear to me. That is not how you go about building a business. I knew because I saw it go wrong. And so it's like, well, those people have wrong is they're not starting with the customer. And it was so clear to me that Bitcoin holders are the customers. Bitcoin holders are the number one users of the blockchain. Why are you going looking for new users for the blockchain or a blockchain or any of that? Like, it's the Bitcoin holders, man. So we self-identified at that. We were long-term Bitcoin holders then. We intended to hold the asset for a long time, and just thought, geez, why aren't there people? And now there are many more people, many times wealthier than us, that are holding Bitcoin. And I don't know that anyone at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, these places are going knocking on their doors or going through that sales motion to say, hey, you're now, welcome to the world of the wealthy. Let me open my doors to you of all the, things I can do for you, or great financial products we have at our bank. So we just saw that as a gap. And then kind of on a third angle, I think just that, that conviction and that way it's written about, right? Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, other factors of just kind of startup lore and like startup strategies. You want to be kind of contrarian and right. And so being able to acknowledge for yourself what you believe or what you think is true, and that a bunch of these people don't see it. A bunch of these people think it's wrong. A bunch of these people have blockers, impediments, or incentives to think something different. That kind of creates something like that early secret or that early idea or that early strategy for your business that you can kind of really begin working from there. So that was between those three things, you're in on that the customer is a long-term Bitcoin holder. How can you provide valuable financial services for them? How can you do it in a way that other incumbents aren't going to see as valuable? You're doing it maybe in a more technologically native way, ideologically or product set native way. And so that was kind of what was formed, the early intention, the early product strategy for Unchained, figuring that nobody's going to care about keys. Nobody's going to care about like how Bitcoiners prefer to custody things, the kinds of things that are going to create trust or build valuable relationships around a client's Bitcoin. Those were just things you had already kind of be a Bitcoiner to know. So outsiders were unlikely to grasp.
And the first product, Joe, was the collaborative custody offering. Is that correct?
No, actually, yeah. And then that the next level refinement analysis too, which involves the others, was like, yeah, what products to start with? Like if it's financial services for Bitcoin holders, where do you go first? We started with lending, actually, Bitcoin backed loans. So our first loan we gave out in the summer of 2017.
That's right.
And it was a custodial loan product, where like all the keys were held at Unchained. But there was infrastructure there to perform multi-sig or have multiple key holders that was leveraged later. And we got there kind of because naively, as we assumed, like, well, custody is kind of solved, right? People have hardware wallets, or they use a BitGo, or they use the custodians, but no one's lending. That year, you did see also the launch of like Salt, who was barely or kind of still around. You have BlockFi launched that year, also not around. So it was kind of in the air, or there was this like, lending now is the asset base is big enough, and there's like enough borrowing demand, and the Bitcoin is great, or like obviously great collateral to people that know. So we started with the Bitcoin backed lending, also thinking that in picking something hard like lending, which has more regulations than just custody, and also requires sourcing capital. So now you gotta kind of join the dollar capital markets with this Bitcoin market of holders for that asset. That also just like going through that hard path was going to create some value or knowledge. I was new to financial services. And so it just kind of became a forcing function as well for a lot of other things. I think we would have an easier time, or actually our lives would have been a lot simpler if we'd started with custody and then layered on lending and other things later. But even still, looking at ourselves first as a lender, that is the first product to then launch future products, we had to consider the worst case scenario, which is the client defaults on the loan or the price of Bitcoin collapsed below the loan. And now we need to make sure we can get the collateral. And that was like, well, if it's at Coinbase or an account at Coinbase, well, they could shut us off. They would have challenges with it being there. Like, it's our dollars on the line at first, and then like other people's on the line, just as important. But how do we maintain that that assuredness that our hands are on this, and that requires like being uh, integrated with the Bitcoin network, having actual Bitcoin infrastructure you run, and managing keys. So that all that was just that kind of doing it hard, forcing function that led to the infrastructure we could take advantage of and build upon for other future products.
You certainly start with a solid foundation. I mean, I've been following you guys for a few years. I think the first time I heard of you guys, Joe, was reading, I believe it was a report by Tur called the Bitcoin Reformation.
Yeah.
This is quite a few years back. And I remember seeing, there's this company in Texas that's, I believe you maybe made mention now that you say that you started with lending, the lending component. But point being, since then, I know you guys have expanded, greatly. So maybe fast forwarding to today, Joe, what are the services that Unchained offers and who are your clients?
Build with Bitcoin is a proud affiliate partner of River. River is a financial services company that allows you to purchase, sell, and transfer your Bitcoin all through a great suite of products, high security standards, and as of recent, even allowing you to earn a Bitcoin yield on your US dollar cash deposits. For a personalized onboarding experience, go to partner.river.com/buildwithbitcoin.
Gosh, well, I mean, Unchained has thousands of clients, mostly in the US, mostly individuals, although we serve businesses as well. And they're clients that are long-term Bitcoin holders that tend to value holding their own keys. That's how really all our products work across Unchained, is the clients holding at least one, if not two keys when it's a vault in their full control. And most of those relationships are started because someone is looking for custody or looking for a secure way to hold their Bitcoin. And there's a lot of benefits to using a service like Unchained versus doing it on your own. Matters of inheritance or putting your Bitcoin in something like a trust. You start to, you need maybe statements, or you need like things that evidences that there's an account here. There's a lot of things in our society and legal system that depend on, like a PDF that shows you have ownership over something. It's a way weaker evidence of ownership than a signed transaction or things like that. But it's still a way the world moves around and treating and looking at assets that way. So just that utility of custody, and we now secure over 100,000 Bitcoin for clients that use us for custody. Now, lending, I mentioned we started with, that's still one of our flagship products. We have a Bitcoin backed loan. We do only work with commercial entities at this point today. So someone has to have an LLC or can be an operating business. We've originated $1 billion of US dollar loans against Bitcoin as collateral. Also, knocking on wood again, clean record of no loan losses. So I think really the longest running lending desk, active since 2017, with zero loan losses. I think it's a great testament to just the quality and soundness of Bitcoin as collateral when done well, and not done with rehypothecation or other risks that can enter into a lending business. Custody, lending, trading, that's one thing that makes our vault set certainly more valuable, is we have MTLs enough to do conduct buy and sell transactions with our clients over 42 states. It's really most of the US. So lacking trading capabilities in New York and maybe one or two others, but that makes the vaults more valuable. People are able to trade in and out of them. We have IRAs, so clients can hold their own keys to Bitcoin in an individual retirement account. That's available also nationwide in partnership with a bank out of Colorado. It's a unique product there, given the fact you can hold your own keys. We have also, about 18 months ago, we started what's called Sound Advisory, which is a registered investment advisory. So it's a wholly owned subsidiary, an affiliate to Unchained, that's registered with the SEC and able to provide financial advice, financial planning, tax prep, tax planning. So that's something we launched really out of the feedback we get from clients and the observation that they're coming in, and some of these people, hey, do you know where I can get work with another advisor? Because my guy keeps telling me to sell my Bitcoin, or I don't even talk to him about the it's 80% of my net worth over here, but he doesn't even know about it because like he just can't talk about it for compliance reasons or doesn't believe in it, or there's just some other practicality in the way of, and still, I mean, there's trillions of dollars of assets in the US that are either managed or overseen by an RIA. Some big companies, some small. So it's a really big market. It's a really popular way that people try to kind of remove the problem of having to think about their money or portfolio management. They remove that and put that responsibility on someone else. So there's definitely a niche there, and we cooperate with other RIAs. There are a few outside that actually use Unchained with their clients. So that's one kind of cool capability. They can hold a key along with their client holding a key, and that shares and spreads some of that responsibility. So Sound Advisor here, yeah, it's grown rapidly. Has now several advisors on staff, and works with lots of families, a lot of our clients to oversee basically do basic portfolio management. Usually, most people are coming to us for financial planning, and my clients that might be in their 50s and have a nice Bitcoin stack they've acquired over the years and want to map out their plan for retirement, or should they take a loan here or should they be selling there, and how to balance this stuff across their portfolio, and have someone they trust and who gets Bitcoin and can kind of plug in the same assumptions they have for the growth of their Bitcoin portfolio. That's one of the value adds we provide over there. Gosh, I mean, it's always a growing suite, but those are mostly our core services, and we across all of them are providing education and onboarding support. We have a signature program for clients that want a lot of extra handholding and white glove support throughout the year, because really a lot of what Unchained is selling is that peace of mind of, if I want to hold my keys, I know I kind of should be doing that, but gosh, can somebody help me make sure I did it right, or that I backed up things in the right way, and that I can turn to my spouse or a next of kin and say, here's what you do if I pass on. Go to this location for this key and call Unchained. That kind of simplicity is what we need to provide to make, I think, Bitcoin as a long-term holding useful for people.
So really, I mean, you can see that, I mean, to your earlier comment about listening to customers and having that drive the growth of the business, that the evolution, because I think what we see, it's been a natural progression where the early Bitcoin holders were people that were in the technical space that heard about it as a technology, or were somehow, and they tend to be more comfortable with the whole process of private key, public key, holding your own peer-to-peer. But as it's become a little bit more popularized or financialized, people are used to having a custodian or used to having somebody help them with those decisions, or so that they don't think about it. Or even as the technical people have gotten older and they're thinking about retirement planning or inheritance planning, is their partner equipped to hold self-custody Bitcoin in the same way they were? How do you poll your customers, or what is your process for listening to the customers to determine what product roadmap you progress along?
Gosh, I mean, there's no perfect answer. We're talking to them. I think that's just one also fact about Unchained and how we're structured, or think about the world, is that especially in that era of when we started, and there was a big narrative around Ethereum and smart contracts, or at least that's where this stuff is going. And what I found to be the case, and it's true across financial services, is that people like to transact with other people. People like the trust side of things comes from people and maybe a brand or reputation or something else, but that's how people come to feel safe. And so we leverage that in the way our sales team works with clients before they're a client, and the way our onboarding team will onboard folks, or our service desk or service staff. As we've grown, I mean, we're now 150 people. We do have more work to do, I think, systematize this stuff. It's just a part of kind of growing up as a business, of just, as there are 2,000 contact points with clients on any given month. Gosh, yeah, how do we triage and sort through and sift out the right things to do next? So it is something, a transition for us, going from the instinct-driven product management, the kind of founder-led ideas and things we've sniffed out. We have kind of filled a lot of that void, or the big ideas there, and so then the sort of more tacking and tactical ideas. We've been building up basically our voice of customer program for even just some time now, to have better data collection, and we have product managers and our product marketing team will talk to clients instead of a way they're one framework obviously is like the jobs to be done framework of just we know what core things we do for clients and here's what they say about how we do them, and there's the kind of grouping and the taxonomy of those different jobs to be done, like make the Bitcoin available for my next of kin, or like just like these kinds of just problem statements and customer viewpoints. It's just about kind of baking that into your DNA and how you structure information from your clients.
Customer service aspect, I think, is so important because I think as you go higher up in the high net worth, like one of the problems I had even chatting with my friends about Bitcoin, even in the last 5 or 10 years, they're like, oh, I'll ask my financial advisor about it. And then, of course, they get shot down with it, or it's like they say not to touch it. And so, sadly, they missed out on my excellent advice to them early on. But anyway, it's just, and then you think about a Coinbase where you cannot reach a person to talk to. For customer service. So I think people who have grown accustomed to a level of personal service in their financial dealings are looking for, you obviously are filling a need between traditional financial services who in many cases still cannot talk to their clients about Bitcoin. I think it's opening up a little bit more. And then Bitcoin exchanges, which don't have the service staff to have a conversation or see how it fits in a bigger picture, or if there's a problem or a question. And I guess where I'm leading with that too is you obviously invest a lot in Unchained in both customer service and also in education. You guys are also known as tremendous supporters of research around it and webinars, podcasts, informational. How do you view the importance of education, or how do you think about that in terms of the overall perspective of Unchained?
Yeah, it's a couple things. Certainly from the standpoint of beginning 8 years ago, the market could look small. You just knew there was only so many thousands of high net worth Bitcoin holders in the US. And maybe for the kind of business Unchained is, it's not enough, or you need that market to be bigger. And, so we all have kind of a duty, and just as Bitcoin holders generally, not even an operating company, to educate. And it's often for other people's benefit. If they do choose to act on it, or add some to their portfolio at any point, it's usually a good idea. So there's some moral imperative. There's just some commercial imperative. Let's grow the market. That's our biggest risk of failures, that the market doesn't become big enough. It's not become big enough now, and then it's now just more of a practical marketing reality. That content marketing is a pillar of a lot of good marketing strategy. It's a way to look and be and appear credible to your clients, that you have high quality content. People like to learn things, even at any age. And so having that experience of learning something from a brand, from a company like Unchained, then possibly positively disposes them to us and our ability to help them through their other problems. So it really kind of coheres as a strategy. It's definitely an investment. It's definitely ways we've tried to navigate between being like a company kind of for the community and like by the community in some respects, really bringing a lot of people to work here out of the Bitcoin community. But we are a business, so it's never actually been a problem or too hard of a pivot that we've had to make at times. We've had to admit to ourselves, or I'm clear, one of our core values or principles is Bitcoin is our common purpose, and it's not our only purpose. Like we are a business, we're a founder-led company, we have these other stakeholders to serve too. So that kind of thing intermixes, and and it's just fun. I think it's fun to teach people things too.
Well, you've done a great job on the community building side of things, Joe, and it's very much appreciated. I mean, I know even just a few years ago, if you were in the Bitcoin space, you're like 1 out of 100 or something like that is how it sometimes felt. And I've personally actually spoken to your customer support team as well, and just watching you guys grow and all of the educational components that you just mentioned, apart from, job creation, et cetera, all the ripple effects. I mean, the impact on the community that you guys have had is very, very much appreciated and admirable. So Unchained as a company, just like any business, a big and core component of building any company is the culture, and balancing how you monetize that business as well. So how do you and your executive team view and handle company culture? What are some of kind of your core tenets at Unchained, and how do you actually monetize the business?
It's something I've sort of, as frankly, even not even always like the most public CEO or somebody who's like always out there in the market. A lot of that's because my focus is culture. My focus is people. And that's been something of a point of pride. It's also a point of, you build a culture of a bunch of principled Bitcoiners, that are willing to, do things by their principles or else, or they're not here, the kinds of things, that's also its own interesting environment and own culture. And I would rather though this place be ruled by its culture than ruled by me. And so also kind of getting that culture right, or knowing that like that culture would and will, is guaranteed to outlast me, just on, assuming Unchained is as successful and beyond my lifetime kinds of things as it could be. So, I think, I'd shared one of our principles was Bitcoin is our common purpose. We developed that out of kind of observation. I feel like a lot of the early culture was baked out of that initial 10, 12, 20 people that were here in the early years. And so by about early 2022 is when I, along with the executive team then, I really formulated this idea of the three principles. I haven't really needed much more, although there's some ways we, as I mentioned, we added some of those corollaries, but Bitcoin is our common purpose, low time preference, and extreme ownership. That like you kind of, you could look around and could see those and how we operated. And it was nice because I really have a distaste for companies that are like, well, our values are integrity. And we value honesty, integrity, and, these things. It's just, it always is like, that's just a word, man. And like, you don't know how that's clicking or what. I could never just like read that as like value statements from a company and then like know anything. And then if I'm inside the company, how does that guide my decision? Or if I'm in a decision, am I actually trading against the value of integrity here, or the value of something? It really, I think is, not very thoughtful. So I think this kind of more principles guided direction and recognition of, when you say low time preference, and it's very kind of in Bitcoin, kind of term, or that the idea that like we value long-term relationships, long-term, outcomes, long-term behaviors versus short-term gain. And it's cool because, then one way that shows up in even just practically things like stock options and how startups, issue equity to their employees. That's been there as a Silicon Valley and otherwise broadly more tech industry centered practice for a long time, due to incentive alignment. If you are an equity holder or you are earning compensation through equity in the business, then you're hopefully thinking like an owner and acting in a way that builds and compounds long-term value, instead of just doing something for like this quarter's commissions or short-term gain. So seeing that things like that were already here, the loan type preference approach, there's a lot of how we approach relationships. I mean, it's hard to have long-term relationships with people unless you're also kind, or that you like demonstrate care, and that you demonstrate that like you treat people well. So that's part of that, how that value's lived. And the corollary is, and we ship with urgency. It's also, it's kind of like, yeah, we're not here to like just wait for Bitcoin to succeed, man. It's like the balance is also this idea of like, but like to be around for the long term, you also got to grind it today. You also got to ship today. You also got like there's an action oriented component, not just a kind of wait and see. And then that extreme ownership idea, some of us had read the Jocko Willink book about called Extreme Ownership. And that's what a lovely concept. I'm so glad that book exists, because it really just enwraps something I felt early, and that I experienced early, and that there be some kind of shadow oriented reasons one could come to think this way, but in a practical minded sense. I mean, extreme ownership is you're in a team and something goes wrong. It might be easy to blame the person that had that in their lap last, but if there's a bug, that's what this issue is. We're diagnosing. How do we get this bug here? Who is it? Oh, who wrote that code? Oh, wait, but like the product manager didn't spec it correctly, and then but the QA person, they didn't complete their test approach. Their tests need to do better to like catch those things, and just all the intermix of things in terms of the system of a company how do we all acknowledge our part in failures, and then also hopefully successes. It's also one way we try to kind of make sure that so where we ritualize it, for instance, is we have an all hands by now every other week, and there's always a segment, usually 5 to 10 minutes, where people, anyone at the company, myself included, if there was a issue or something that we know went wrong in the last week or two, we people get to admit that, put in their hands, say, this shipped in the wrong way, or this happened, or there's this customer issue, or we don't know if something happened there. That was me. Sorry, I learned this. And we, other people will chime in or add to it. And then also like a shout out, like, hey, somebody owned that really well. That data report I needed, and I needed it, yesterday, but that they came through or worked hard that night for me. Like, it's just a way to kind of spread some of that love and talk to it. And this one was a hard one to find the corollary for, because what about any of that is there like a thing to mitigate, or where does that go wrong? And so it did take some time to kind of also understand, in a growing company, in a startup, when everyone is so eager to take ownership or work later, these things, so that you get something like that problem with like martyrdom, or a failure to delegate, or a failure to say, yeah, I'm eager to help, but that actually may not be my problem. Or I might be serving the business by saying we have a role boundary here that's not being maintained, or that's like this, we actually need a new role for this, or acknowledge that that's like needs to be your role to carry this on forward. And so the corollary with celebrating extreme ownership is, and we prioritize and delegate, that we can't just try to do it all and like maximally own it all the time, but you have to trim things down, focus, prioritize, and try to ensure the right people are working on right things, and not just saving their friends and teammates all the time.
So many of the Bitcoin companies that we've had the pleasure of speaking with, they have almost purely remote teams and distributed teams in the kind of the ethos of Bitcoin. But I know you have an office that has a lot of your employees in Austin, because I've been to it. And how do you think about, I mean, is everybody there, or how many employees do you have now, or what is the kind of distribution of the team members?
We have about 150 people, 40 or so about in Austin. So almost a third. And 70-80% of them come to the office every week. So it's a good number. It's a good nexus. It's nice to have this kind of HQ that can be, like a locus or a central point for us, headquarters. And what's ended up working really well, or something I definitely advise any company that's growing and has, kind of diversity of teams and departments, is that at least once a year by now, all departments have like a full department on site here at HQ. So all the marketing team gets to come out and have, they're on site for a couple of days. The product and design team can do it. The engineering team can do it. Compliance. So while everyone else is generally hybrid, and we bring in cookies. We have cookies here every Friday, so they're gonna be jealousy about that. But that's even just the kind of way you also have to play with these things, because while there are like some HQ centered privileges, it's also a privilege to work from your home all the time. That's cool. Or work for a Bitcoin company anywhere in the world. But like we do like once a quarter, just because we have this cookie tradition here every Friday. I have a sweet tooth, but once a quarter, our people team they don't mail it, but like for every place, a city, or every city in the world where someone is, they figure out the cookie delivery service for that person, or like the way for like them to get cookies, once a quarter. So you kind of like, you have to work the hybrid type of thing, be mindful of those, just like Austin centric privileges versus being elsewhere kinds of privileges. And that's all part of the bag too.
It's a happy medium, ultimately. I mean, we definitely swayed the other way post pandemic to the remote life, and we're not moving away from that, but there is lots to be said as well about actually feeling part of a team and connect. That human aspect is just so important. On the fundraising journey, Joe, I'd love to get your takes here, and some, your approach, some maybe lessons learned, because this can be one of the toughest parts about trying to grow a startup. Is, okay, I have my idea, I maybe have proof of concept, but of course need some capital to grow here. And you guys have been around for quite a long time in Bitcoin years, for Bitcoin standards. You've raised to date a little over $100 million in venture capital financing. Can you share a little bit with us about what your approach has been from day one to fundraising, and if you would change that approach at all, looking back.
Oh gosh, you're putting me through some PTSD here, Israel. Asking me to go back to the beginning on fundraising. Um, it's like I think there's like a Mark Andreessen thing about it. It's like fundraising, like chewing glass. Just have to grit your teeth at the rejection. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough anywhere, anytime, any cycle, any industry. I think there was especially headwinds when you were starting a Bitcoin company throughout 2016 to 2020, even as second time entrepreneurs. It would have been, and there was a moment too. I talked to Drew about what to start next, and before we were really committed to Bitcoin, I was like, man, what if we just do another data company? Like, all those people fund us again. Like, we know that market, we know these, and so like, and there's definitely a sense of like false confidence, I think, too, of just like thinking you know a thing, but like, really like the business reality that's what will smack you in the face. And his quip at the time, which is wise, was, you only get to go to kindergarten again so many times in life, or just like when you can kind of go retool, reschool, and learn something new from the ground up. So that's definitely what we did here. Back to fundraising, and that was just kind of one of the things. It's like, there weren't many experienced entrepreneurs or second entrepreneurs, even in Bitcoin in 16 or 17. And none of really, frankly, our investors in our last business did anything with us in this one, because they're like, Bitcoin, no, or like, yeah, they didn't get it. They weren't on that track back then. And then each way there was like some form of excuse, between, I don't know if the market's big enough. Oh yeah, Bitcoin, but why don't you do the other cryptos? So like always a lot of this kind of lack of understanding or appreciating or seeing the same opportunity we did. So how did I fundraise? By hook and by crook, just like any way I could get dollars in the door over a lot of that time period. We did. I think things I learned, or things that started to make fundraising either less painful, or at least put me more in, I think, the camp or idea of having an appreciation for like the art of fundraising. This came later, and this was just kind of an inversion of understanding for me between the idea of perfection and the inverse, or like a principle of connection. Like, basically, one of the things that works against you as an entrepreneur and founder is you're trying to be perfect. You want your business to be perfect. You want your pitch deck to be perfect. When you get on with the investor and you want to present, you want to be perfect in your delivery, your pitch, your conversation. Like, there's this, just your system is online to say, this has got to be perfect. This is on the line. If I don't get the yes from this investor, it's going to suck. It's going to be painful, and I might miss like payroll, or I can't make that higher or expand. And there's a lot wrong with that. I just had to learn, one, perfection doesn't exist. Like, Israel's idea of perfect, if you were an asset manager running billions of dollars, or VC, is already gonna be different than my idea of perfect, which is gonna be different than Lynn's idea of perfect from her. So it's like, there's also no bar to meet that is actually perfect. So it's like, oh, that is definitely logical. And people also, because perfection doesn't exist, people don't, they don't invest in things that don't exist. It's like, to realize, what is the thing that motivates? What is the thing that says, like, I gotta write that check. I gotta wire that money. I gotta make that work. That's a process done out of a feeling of connection. Like, I feel connected to this thing. I feel like I understand it. I feel like I can influence it. I feel like I can shape it. I like the person. I like what it's doing, and so that's what I started learning is what you want to index on when you're building relationships with investors, you're going about raising money. Don't think about it as a process that needs to be perfect. Try to think about a process centered around this idea of connection. And even just like a practical thing, or one of my big piece of advice to anyone fundraising now would be like, when I had this realization too, I shifted for one of my fundraise cycles in 2022, of like my investor CRM, my spreadsheet, used to be, name, firm, maybe like stage or like, between intro or other, and then like maybe some notes and propensity to invest or odds or things like that. I scrapped that and instead just did one column for the person, which was my connection score, which is just a answer from my body of like, how connected do I feel to that person right now? And you're pretty quickly, you're like, oh gosh, yeah, we're like that. That one visa, I don't know. I met that guy at a bar. We had a really good connection. We talked about a bunch of things. Like, I put him at like 25% versus the like, random cold intro you got that was at 10. And so it then became a game to like, how do I increase this connection score? And then like, sure as heck, the person that just wired you money, like they're sitting at 99%. Like that. There's the correlation there was almost perfect. It's just like, we go down this path together. We build a relationship. We're understanding. We get these things. And like, what do you know? Lo and behold, like, I love you, you love me, and like you just wired me money. Like it's great. That's sort of how how to come to think about it, to feel even better about it, or feel like it was even just more something I could control.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think a lot of times, having been in the VC business myself for so long, it's like I also feel that, when it gets down from an investor perspective, the founder and the quality of the founder and their commitment to the idea, commitment to the idea, but also flexibility to adjust to market conditions or things like this. But it really, I learned the hard way, but learned over time and time again. It was like the most successful exits in companies and relationships were those where the founders, you just did have that great connection. And it's so important. But having said that, I mean, when you were first raising, like I don't know when you're first raising, when you first went out and did it, but you have a Bitcoin company, but Ethereum's just launching and picking up a lot of attention and steam, and ICOs are popping up, and from the investor perspective, especially Silicon Valley, was there pressure for you to issue a token? And you talked about people wanting, suggesting that you expand into other cryptos. How difficult was it for you to stay focused on Bitcoin? And I think you did have some Ethereum in the early days of Unchained, which certainly is understandable based on the market at the time. But, how much did you guys struggle with conviction on what you saw and what was being asked of you in terms of potential investors to expand the market that you were going after, the products that you were servicing?
Yeah. I mean, in part we were served by even our misadventure there with Ethereum, because we, but to even point out, listening to customers, we opened our doors for lending first against Bitcoin as collateral, 2017. And, within weeks and months of a launch, like people were inquiring, well, oh great, I'm taking Bitcoin loan. What about against my Ethereum? Can you lend against my Ethereum? Like we would just get that inbound request and inbound flow, and it's just like, so it seemed clear. Oh, great way to like grow our loan book and make more loans is now to work with Ethereum. And it's another cryptocurrency, definitely different design. Or that wasn't necessarily my area of expertise, or look at like how difficult it'd be to support, but it seemed reasonable that like, okay, let's maybe see if we can support that too, get more customers. And it just became, an odyssey. We did in form and fact of like our desire to be very real or work with reality, like not, so we also wanted to have our lending model on an infrastructure basis, work with it similarly, like at the same level our Bitcoin lending model worked with. So, and you looked at like the smart contracts and things in the Ethereum landscape, and they were all very confusing and all these different things. So no, we want something that there's just the multi-sig thing we need for the Ethereum collateral that's backing the loans. And so invested a lot of engineering hours into running that, or to building that, running Ethereum node, and learned over the year to almost a year and a half we'd supported that product of just what a pain in the butt it was, and like just how, kind of a little nerve-wracking it is to have your own like do-it-yourself contract on this, as simple as what it was, probably safe as it still was, and that your Ethereum node needed updated constantly. It was still not very reliable, and we saw then the market data, like our loan book for Ethereum was only about 5% of what the Bitcoin loan book was. So there's enough evidence and things that stack up on a cost to benefits type thing, but did still take some cuts, because I had to tell our board, which did consist of investors at that time, hey guys, we're going to back out of Ethereum and we're going to just focus on Bitcoin. And so it was controversial, and some of them, have investments in exchanges or like see these other things, but So we did get that done, and then it served as like our story from then on about like anybody asking us about the cryptocurrencies. Hey, we tried it. Hey, we did have that for a while, and it's it's different than the custody idea and different than these other things, but um, that was definitely there in terms of that story of like altcoin, other crypto kinds of pressures, and by now there's just enough success, and I think as well, not only from like a technological reality, but like just a monetary reality. Bitcoin is the most money of any of the cryptocurrencies, and we're a financial services business, so we're going to work with the money, and just brand, customer relationship. People, especially when they're engaging with a financial service provider, they want to work with one that they believes the same things they do, or that like operates with within the context or the reasons for things that they trust. And so, like, there's the idea that Unchained would ever support it. Like, it's like Coke launching, a different flavor or something like that. Like the idea that like Unchained would ever support anything else would just destroy so much value.
Well, you've honed in on your specialty, to put it that way, now, Joe. And going forward, as far as product roadmap, are there any particular releases or product expansions that Unchained is working on? What's the next 12 months look like for the company, let's say?
Yeah, a lot of our focus is overall from the standpoint of serving the financial services needs of a long-term Bitcoin holder, like doing more for them. And so I mentioned things like our registered investment advisory subsidiary, Sound Advisory, that works with folks, traditional assets, traditional portfolios. A lot of MicroStrategy talk in there, but otherwise, like definitely our strategy stocks in there, but like other like just traditional stocks kinds of things. So we're not like maybe Robinhood any day or kind of a thing, but it is about how to be given we clients already trust us with their Bitcoin, how to be their trusted channel for other things. One big piece of news, one exciting thing that we'll be announcing, I know, just before that this is released, but is we've secured a trust company charter in the state of Wyoming. It's called Gannett Trust. Gannett Trust Company, named after one of the mountains in Wyoming, one of the bigger peaks, and it's really cool. It's going to be the first really Bitcoin native, really Bitcoin focused trust company. There are trust companies out there that do custody. They're usually tucked inside of a BitGo or other custodian. Having a trust company is part and parcel or essential to being able to provide qualified custody for funds and fund managers that need a custody option. So in general, those are doing kind of just custody, and they're doing cross cryptos or cross cryptocurrency assets in a way that isn't native, doesn't have native multi-sig support, for instance. Doesn't have a way that trust company can like collaborate with their clients, much like Unchained today has collaborative custody for across our products. So Gannett will be this just kind of exciting new one of its kind trust that can do custody, but also can work with clients that have like matters around estate planning, trusts and personal trusts, as they're putting Bitcoin into a trust vehicle that then they want to work with a third-party trustee or an institutional trustee to help ensure that in the event of their death or just for the overall administration of that trust, that it happens in a way that a trust institution must follow, like that that's what they're there to do. And it's definitely been a new world for me, even learning at Unchained. But again, the amount of assets in a trust is kind of, again, another just like hidden. A lot of people, I guess, but hidden, but that's right. It's just, I think for especially young people, they're maybe not appreciative of just what the importance of trust companies are, just like the backbone to the financial assets of a lot of people, where they're held in trusts, but then in connection with a trust company. And so it's a way we've seen it already on Unchained. I mean, one of our most popular account types for our vaults is a trust. So it's, you put your Bitcoin into a trust that then it's wrapper. You're still holding your keys, but there are certain trusts that you can't also then self-custody. It has to be custodied elsewhere. But maybe you still like to do it where it's custodied in a true multi-sig, a true Bitcoin native fashion. Maybe you can still hold a key, or there's multiple parties or multiple constituents holding a key. So again, it's just kind of a really new, exciting piece of our infrastructure here. It's going to let us do a lot more things. It's going to bring, I think, more credibility to the kind of financial services we have and do. And it will also take on like the wealth management and financial planning that already happened at Sound Advisory will now roll into Cannon Trust. So we'll be announcing that on, and then we'll say the 21st of May, and then we'll be accepting his first customers come summer.
Congratulations on that. I think that's a really important evolution of services, and really expands markets too for your customers, even thinking about things like nonprofits and other entities beyond, that use that trust system more commonly for holding their assets. When you have changing people in charge of the assets, then having a trust company manage that, it gives a sense of control. And that's huge news,
Yes.
Really big news, and we'll be sure to spotlight that. And speaking of nonprofits, I do want to just talk a little bit about the commitment that Unchained has been making in recent years to support your local community through your effort with the University of Texas Endowment Fund that you participated in, and then also what you announced recently in April of this year about $1 million commitment to the Bitcoin Legacy Project, which is in support of the Bitcoin ecosystem and involving that from a developer standpoint and from education standpoint. So I would love to get your thoughts on, number one, how you and Unchained as a company, have come to this, and what your perspective is on participating in this level.
Yeah, mixes several different things there. The education we talked about, that's important, and so not always do we have to be the educators, but if we can use our dollars or expenses towards others that are doing a great job at education, that's worth something. Back to the idea that community is both the place where our clients are, where our current and future employees live, where we live. Like that's just already naturally something to kind of want to support. And one of the things you mentioned, one minor correction is the University of Austin, not the University of Texas, but
Yes.
easy confusion. And but really cool, exciting university project. There's been, I think that the idea is there hasn't been a newly chartered university since the 70s, or an actual new state charter, at least in Texas. I think there might be a few others nationwide, but so rare, very rare for someone to start a new university, and it's started by great people between Barry Weiss, Ferguson, and Joe Lonsdale. Just that, hey, this is instead of crowing and whining and complaining about the state of higher ed, let's start a new one. Let's start build something new. Much I think how Bitcoin is a new institution in its own right. So I just saw a lot of great things there. Their campus is actually across the street from us here downtown. So they made their announcement a couple of years ago, and then they actually first accepted their first students last fall. So they'll be their first full academic year will be completing here in a couple of weeks. And so I just saw between the new institution spirit and ideologically and just mentally, what they're thinking about philosophically, that there was something in there for Bitcoin, and that the people that love that and love UATX would also love Bitcoin, and vice versa. So it felt like I saw a good opportunity to be a nice bridge with them, and they were excited to be really the first university with its own Bitcoin endowment. What makes them unique, as well as the Bitcoin they raise, they're holding for 5 years or more. That was something important. I gave a personal donation, and just I knew and coached them. It's hey, I would only really part with my Bitcoin for your endowment if you agree to hold it. I don't want a lot of universities will say we accept Bitcoin or we accept these things, but then they're just selling it, or just going into some bigger portfolio management strategy instead of maybe a hold through of Bitcoin. So and that also brought up one of our other products, or I think that a wrapper within part of the Bitcoin Legacy Project is a donor advised fund. Some people are familiar with donor advised funds. There's I think the fastest growing vehicle for making donations to nonprofits. But the idea is you put assets, whether cash or stocks, and now in our case Bitcoin, into a donor advised fund that you get all of your kind of tax write-offs, or you get to realize the donation that year. That doesn't mean that you have to then give it to the organization that year. It can stay in that fund for some period of time, and then you often get to administer or choose where it goes to what causes that you can meter out over time. And so we have a DAF product in partnership with a firm called University Impact that lets clients move their physical Bitcoin into a donor advised fund. They hold a key. University Impact holds a key, and Unchained holds a key. You just forfeit, some control. It's like it can't be a self custody type of product. But now that's one way. Like our clients are moving Bitcoin into something that they can like hold for their church or hold for some of their nonprofit that like they can't really accept Bitcoin yet. But you're like, but I really want to give one Bitcoin this year or something. Put it in my DAF, and then for each quarter's worth of like donations I'm doing next year, I'll pull it out of there. So it's a way to get physical Bitcoin. Have these neat features, leverage multi-sig, be something Bitcoin native. And then as part of the Bitcoin Legacy Project, I went to an event earlier this year where I learned a lot more about Bitcoin core development and the organizations that support that, and how little or how much monetary support they give. And there are some great 501c3 entities that fund and employ core developers. And so part of the Bitcoin Legacy Project was also doing a matching program for people that would want to match or want to donate through a DAF into one of these organizations like Brink or other organization that supports Bitcoin core development. And then we'll match that on the corporate side. I think up to 1 Bitcoin is where we set the one initial, and we'll see if that's successful. We'll want to do more. But overall, I think we've leveled up in like how we kind of market things. A lot of these things were done in a scattered way, I think, in previous years and over time, supporting things like the Bitcoin Commons, now Bitcoin Park. And like a lot of the financial support we were doing just kind of happened without maybe always like talking about it. And so really wrapping in this like Bitcoin Legacy Project was a way to kind of make clear of like, hey, we're already doing a lot of these things. We're pledging more in different directions, and let's make that clear.
It's certainly, I mean, first of all, that's amazing. All those initiatives are just great to see. It feels like Austin's just so ahead from most other cities and communities. You guys definitely have created something special there. So great to see, Joe. I want to be conscious of time. I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but I want to circle back a little bit to some of the lessons you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast from your sailing experience and early life. You mentioned the importance that it had on you as a person and as an entrepreneur. You mentioned self-reliance, taking responsibility, curiosity, having kind of an open mind. Plugging that into just kind of general advice, Joe. I mean, what would you say to people out there getting interested in this space?
I think, gosh, I mean, I credit my dad with so much. I think just, I think there was something in that choice, right? Of after my mom died, that he chose to take us sailing. That like, hey, instead of sort of, I don't know, wallowing in some grief or just hanging out in my community or the situation here, that because it's been comfortable. Maybe it actually wasn't comfortable for him. It was like, I actually can't not think about my wife or things at this point, but that what was a tragedy became a call to adventure. And I think that for a lot of those turning points in life, I had experience. My wife's family lives, her parents live in the Dallas area, and we were up there for Mother's Day. I was driving solo back with our 2 daughters on Sunday, and I've been doing that drive, hundreds of times, many times a year for almost 2 decades now, and I got a flat tire for the first time. So I was like, oh, damn it. Oh, man, I was so pissed. There's all this stuff I need to get back to Austin for I need to set up for work on my week and some things. Or, it was just like, I was so frustrated. And then it took a second, or just kind of processing that. And then it was just like, we had to have a tow truck come. It was our car, just have a spare stuff. But, it got to be an adventure. My daughters and I got to ride in the front of the cab of the tow truck and bounce up and down for 30 minutes on the way to Waco. The cab driver was a amazing, interesting man. He let my daughter operate the levers of his flatbed for his tow truck, kind of a thing. So I just think, it's a lot, especially in Bitcoin or life. You always get thrown those flat tires or those like curveballs, or somebody quits or somebody died, or this kind of stuff, and just like that embrace of the turn, the adventure, from that, I think is just an instinct that is always worth cultivating.
It's a beautiful way to look at life. And I think the low time preference that you also mentioned as part of your company culture just enables Bitcoiners to kind of shift their worldview to be thinking in those terms too. So instead of thinking about the things that you're not getting done, you just enjoy the moment and the adventure um, and see that. So yeah, those are beautiful words of advice. As we close out, Joe, again, congratulations on this announcement that you're making. And then you will also be at Bitcoin 2025 in Vegas this year. And any other, can you share with us a little bit about what Unchained has planned there and any other upcoming conferences or events that you'll be at?
Yeah, so definitely going to be at Bitcoin Vegas. There, we will have a booth, I believe, in the Well Pass area. Our speaker have a Well Pass. Please come guys see us. And we, I do give I'm on a panel, I believe on the Thursday up there. And then, a fun conference I'm excited for, having been from Anchorage, Alaska, is the Bitcoin Alaska conference happening in Juneau. So I will be there speaking as well, but also just really looking forward to being in Alaska talking about Bitcoin. My brother, when he heard I was coming up to Juneau, but not Anchorage where he lives, he was like, "Oh, we're having a Bitcoin conference in Anchorage too, Joe, if that's what's going to take, but we'll see him. We'll stop through Anchorage." But yeah, I'm stoked for that. And luckily, I haven't really planned my back half of the year though yet. So that one's happening around July 4th, and we'll see what's next.
Well, perfect. I think we can maybe end it here, Joe. Just really want to thank you for your time. Congrats on everything you're doing at Unchained. You guys are one of the more important pillars of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So big admiration there. Thank you for all the advice you shared as well. And maybe just closing off, where can people find you? I guess, social media, or what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, well, I'm on X at Joseph Kelly. Our company Twitter handle is our X handle at Unchained, and you can email me anytime, joe@unchained.com. Happy to help and happy to. I especially love startups, love early stages, love building, love helping. So feel free to reach out if you feel called.
Thank you, Joe. Hope to have you on again in the future. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Build with Bitcoin podcast. If you found benefit in what you heard in this episode, we'd truly appreciate it if you would like, share, or leave a comment on whichever platform you're listening, as this helps others find us, which is especially important for a new podcast. And as a reminder, our content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not to be considered investment advice or a recommendation to invest in any company or asset mentioned in the podcast. Build with Bitcoin is a proud affiliate partner of River, a full-service, 100% reserve custody, Bitcoin-only financial services company. For your next Bitcoin purchase, use our exclusive link, partner.river.com/buildwithbitcoin. Thank you sincerely for being a part of the Build with Bitcoin community.